today's episode, I speak to Lisa Haggar about influence and how to live for the crazy. With many HR professionals losing their jobs, there is a need for them to be able to stand up from the others and demonstrate why they are the best talent for the role. Lisa and I discuss the idea that the key skill of HR needs to be influence and the avoidance of being a busy fool. And Lisa goes on to talk about how she became a big influence on LinkedIn and how others can emulate that success. Her ability to push her network enabled her to secure a new HR position, and Lisa's new company approached her on LinkedIn because they were able to resonate with what she was saying. Lisa is a maverick and lives for the crazy. She's not afraid of change. Also in the conversation, I talk about how I've helped teams to be not just change ready, but to become change hungry. This is a fantastic conversation about change, influence, and the need to be relevant. Listen up to the rest of the conversation. Before we begin our conversation, here is a quick shout out to the pathologically curious. Check out the Maverick Paradox magazine. It's a digital magazine written by Mavericks for business owners and professionals. You can find the magazine at themaverickparadox.com. The magazine's aim is to provoke maverick leadership everywhere. Welcome to the Maverick Paradox podcast, where we explore what it is to be a maverick and discover effective modes of leadership. I am Judith Germain, and my mission is to propel the maverick mindset into a world where character and integrity will ultimately have a higher premium than personality and bureaucracy. So thank you for joining me on this journey. If you would like to continue with me, then please subscribe to my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other popular podcast platforms. And today, our guest is Lisa Haggar. Hi, Lisa.
Good morning, Judith. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm extremely excited to be speaking to you today because I sense a kindred spirit.
Yes, I think we're going to get on like a house on fire. I think we're very aligned on very passionate about the topics for sure. Yeah.
So before we start into our conversation, tell us about you.
Oh gosh, do you know when people ask you that? I've obviously recently gone through a number of interviews where people say, tell me about yourself. And there's one thing I'm actually not very good at doing is telling people about me, because most of my career and my life, I ask people about them. So when people turn around and ask me about me, I kind of go, right, what do you want to hear? And I just think that's really funny based on, the role that I do. Yes, so I have been in HR for almost 30 years. And I've loved my career. I started off in admin and then grew my career to a group HR director, mostly focused in scale up and startup businesses because I like the pace, I like the agility, I live for the crazy, but it's allowed me to understand the business as well as all the moving parts. And I think, in HR you can specialize, but for me, I like the generalist of getting my hands busy on all parts. So it's what I do, it's what I love, it's who I am. And I do a number of, volunteering with charities. I'm a huge advocate of mental health charities that I'm supporting right now. I do, I have a coaching business and an online business as well, and a referrals business. So although HR is my first and always will be primary love, I still have an awful lot of other stuff going on as well. So I'm not going to use the word entrepreneur because I don't like it, but I'm a HR professional and a business person. That's how I would describe myself.
That's fantastic. And that probably explains why you understand the world of work in terms of not just the HR, because you're running your own business as well. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, that's a good comment. And yes, I've definitely learned a lot. And I've learned from some of the most, the best people. Some of the CEOs I've worked with have been incredible. Unofficial or official mentors. Where I haven't known something, I've just gone and said, how do you do that? How do you get to that conclusion? Why did you get to that conclusion? How does that work? And whilst I know I've been a pain in people's butts at times, I've used it every learning opportunity where it's presented itself and got involved. Because I think people know by now I'm not shy.
Yeah, that's good. What I think is interesting, certainly when I was director in HR, I noticed that a lot of my HR colleagues only understood HR. They didn't actually understand the business that they were in, i.e. the industry that they were in, but also they were unable to add to the function. So if there was a marketing issue, they didn't understand marketing, so they couldn't support, or if there was a ops issue, they couldn't understand that. Do you think it's really important for HR to get the business that they're in as well as the industry, or do you think it's more important to just stay focused on the HR elements?
I think if anybody is serious, see, it depends on the organisation. Let's be, let's get really sort of very real and blunt here. Some organisations encompass HR into their leadership and understand how it fits into part of the puzzle and are engaging in getting people from HR involved in all aspects. And some aren't. And so it depends on the culture of the company, because if you're, let's face it, we've all been in companies where you're a transactional department, you are where people go for tea and cuddles when they're upset and nobody knows what to do with people. You're the admin department, and you're the department that people send people to if they've been naughty of any kind. It's like, oh, that's they're not performing very well, rather than the line manager deal. Oh, it's now HR's problem. And so depending on the organisation, depends what you can do whilst you're in there. I think that's a very key point to make, because what we're not saying here is every HR person has the opportunity to get involved in the business, because for some people it's very segregated. My honest answer is then, if you're serious about your career, you need to move from where you are. But, I won't go and have a mass exodus on my hand from that comment. But do you know what I mean? So, but for some people, it's a very transactional role. But you and I have the school where we say we can add so much more value by not being that. And actually, by putting in efficiencies in things like policies and processes, which we know we have to have, they should only be 20% of the role, and the other 80% should be adding commercial value, whether, regardless of what that may be, but adding commercial value, which, adds to the bottom line and then stops that, that kind of label that we've got, which says HR's a draw on the bottom line. They're not fee earners, they're not fee generators. Therefore, they're a nice to have, but they're not essential. So again, it depends on the mindset of the company and the leaders and the board that run it. Yeah,
and I think the only thing that you've left out there is the ability to influence from the HR person.
Yes, yeah.
As well.
And that's probably the one key skill I say to people. It's the, yes, go in, and even if they don't invite you to meetings, just ask.
Yeah.
What's the worst they could say is, no, I don't think it's appropriate for you to sit in this meeting. And then I go, well, why?
Well, exactly.
and you say,
and they go, oh, okay, you can come.
Yeah, because it's HR, we don't really want to say no, we don't really want to wind her up. So I go, I might have sit in and just listen and learn. And then they go, okay. And then by that time you're half walked in the room, you're there anyway.
So it's just down to you to add value. I mean, like I used to say to my teams, like you go to a new organisation and traditionally you'd go in, it's a kind of transactional HR, and I would say to the team, okay, there are some things on HR that's a cycle. You have to recruit at a certain point, you've got to pay people at a certain point, but you make that cycle lean so that you've got time to spend on the other stuff that's important.
And it's about understanding what is important, because we can all be busy fools and spend many hours doing lots of things that need doing, and we have this endless list of this to-do list that's got 55 things on it every day. And I said to people, well, are they critical? Get your top 5, do your most important thing of the day and make that your priority. Because we can all be busy doing things that actually, when you think about it, they're not adding any value. They're just things that people need doing. It's like, well, if they're not adding value and you can't measure them, so you can't see if they're successful, then what's the point of doing them? Put them in a bin and start again. And my huge thing of that is the handbook. And I know people will harpoon me for saying this, but I think you should get the handbook, and I think you should put the handbook in the bin. Because it stops a conversation. And at the end of the day, we work with people, Judith. That's where our passion lies. So if somebody wants to know something, I get it's not very efficient to keep asking HR, how many days holiday have I got? Or can I do this? So you're going to have a portal where there's some obvious, FAQ sort of, people can refer to, of course. but not in the form of a handbook. And then if somebody has a bit more of a interesting conversation to have, do you know what? Take 5 minutes of the day and answer them, because that's engagement. And what people don't realize is the psychology of making that person feel wanted, needed, included, and respected means they're going to stay with you. And who wants to lose the best talent just because you haven't found the time for people?
Exactly. I mean, it's that kind of conversation around what is it that you're trying to achieve, and then you have a discussion around that, and then if need be, you could say, well, this is what the policy is. But you don't start off with the policy is this. You start off with what do you want to achieve? But totally get that. What I find fascinating when we talked about influence and the need for HR to be influential is that you are very influential. I can imagine you're very influential inside work, because I can see that you're an influencer outside of work, especially on LinkedIn. How did that happen? Did you plan it, or did it just happen by accident?
Part and part, if I'm really honest. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm a LinkedIn guru or a LinkedIn coach by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a purposeful move, yes. So what I wanted was for a number of things, really. It started out when I lost my job a few years ago after being made redundant, that networking was the way forward, rather than, and a bit like recently after I'd lost my job recently with COVID, the same approach really was, I've got a huge network. And at the time I didn't obviously start off with a huge network, but it was very, okay, who do I want to be connected with? So I haven't gone and randomly clicked on, 20,000 people and said, be my friend. Everybody in my network makes sense to me. Because I wanted to build something that meant something, that was purposeful, from people that I could learn, that they would write articles and blogs that I could read and go, that's really interesting. And actually, I disagree. Let's have a conversation about that and actually take some learning from that. So it was my own personal development that was the reason I started it, because I wanted to learn from bigger and better, as I still do. And I love that. I still like to challenge my brain a lot. So that's actually where it started. And what I found as time had gone on is most of the people I connected with, very few people actually post, and very few people engage with other people's posts. And maybe do an odd like, but they do it from behind a curtain. And so that part of why do you stay in the shadows? And then I looked at it, and it was actually more HR people stay in the shadows. They'll read, but they won't engage, or the DMs would light up with I don't want to say this publicly, but. And then I would say to people, well, why not? Why are you afraid of having a voice? And it came down to two things. One, I'm not confident about doing it in public in case people judge me. And the other was, well, what if my employer sees it and they don't like what I've written? Well, and again, I would say to people, well, there's two things, again, which is, well, one, you're allowed to have a voice as long as it's not, you're not treating anybody to anything that's detrimental. If you can agree or disagree with something, as long as it's, professionally done, and throw a bit of humor in there, because at the end of the day, we are people. And I know that there's the whole thing about, this isn't Facebook. No, it isn't Facebook. But the same way as we are human beings and we have a personality, and people resonate with a personality. So the reason why I think I've been successful on this is because they start to know me, and I'm cheeky and naughty and a little bit sass, and I'm vocal. I'm vocal in a space where very few people are vocal because they're afraid, whereas I'm not. And if I post something, I read back and then go, oh, actually, do you know what, Judith, that's awesome. Yeah, that came out of my head and it came down on paper, and it wasn't quite the same thing as it translated, when you read it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've all done it. And you just pull it back. You just pull it off and you go, yeah, that's not quite as I planned. And of course, I've had some that have had great responses, and and I've had some that have had a lot of responses, but a lot of them have been very negative, to the point where I've had to pull a few people off and said, enough. Because people can have a view, but when that person starts to attack another person's view, that's not conducive to what it's about. So I will take control of that and either tell them to step down or tell them to delete it, or they get blocked. So I manage that. And so it's not that I expect everybody to be happy clapping and agree with everybody. Debate is good, as long as it just stops. The moment it stops going from a debate into an attack, I don't tolerate that. Absolutely not at all. So I pull that back. So so it kind of started off with that, and then obviously my messages, things I write, resonate with my audience. It makes sense when I'm talking about people, when I'm talking about throw the handbook in the bin. Most people in HR go, oh yes, I'd love to do that, Lise. I'd love to do that, and maybe are not in the position to, or for whatever reason. But that's why my posts do so well, because it resonates with my audience. It wouldn't resonate if I had an audience full of, say, salespeople and marketing people, and people who work in retail. It wouldn't translate. And so it's about, you can grow your numbers, but grow them in a space that's right for your network. Otherwise, I mean, I don't sell anything on there. I have a coaching business and I've never advertised it. And that sounds crazy in LinkedIn with my numbers that I could advertise it. I don't. I work on referrals because proofs is in the pudding. But I don't need to, because the more this grows, the more people come to me and say, I really like your stuff. I really like your approach. I could really help with helping with my business, helping with my confidence, helping with steering me in my career. People come to me. So, but that's all on the back end of doing the work now. So my thing for people, I say to people, don't be afraid. Put your voice out there. Your LinkedIn profile is not the business's LinkedIn profile. That's you as an individual. Speak to your employer and say, I want to start posting some things. If there's anything you think you don't like, or it doesn't quite, sit with the values of the business, then let me know and I'll take it down. So nobody gets into trouble. But because it's LinkedIn and not Facebook, and it's not dancing on the tables, I don't see what the problem is.
Yeah, it's a bit strange in a way, because if you're a HR person and you're frightened of what you might post is going to affect the company, then for me, that's a point to reflect on.
Yes. But again, it also comes back to people are afraid to put their head over the parapet.
It can be
because if everybody doesn't agree with them, or what if my boss sees that and he doesn't like it? Well, your boss isn't going to like that you say burn the handbook. Well, then go and have a conversation with your boss. Say, I've had an idea. I think we should burn the handbook. And this is the reason why. These are the benefits. And it comes back to what you said earlier, absolutely spot on. It's about your influencing skills. The reason one of my new employee who I joined on the 5th of October, which I'm super excited about, is we met on LinkedIn. She'd already seen some of my stuff and then has continued to see it, and likes that I'm so passionate about the topic, and that fact I make a big noise in this space, which is relevant. And actually it's a strength for the business to have somebody who's so passionate about what it is that we want to do, rather than it's a detriment of, she comes off as a bit over the top sometimes. My personality, I can't change that. I'm not about to change who I am for anyone. And you either get me or you don't, and that's absolutely fine. And I say that to people. But the 50% who do get me get the full value of all of my passion.
And it's so important, especially for HR, because I think HR has a reputation of, human remains and being robots, not really caring and empathizing. So to see a leader being the complete opposite inside and outside of work is so powerful.
Yeah, and I just think there's so many more people out there who feel exactly the same thing, but they just aren't courageous enough to have that voice. And again, the businesses I've worked with, where we've worked with CEOs who are people-centric, and we focus on the people-centricity in terms of leadership, the results have been stunning, that it cannot be denied. It's really, really powerful stuff. And, who doesn't want to be part of that success story for sure?
Exactly. That's really cool. So I've been defining Mavericks as willfully independent people from 2005, and I think you fit right in there. Welcome to the club.
Thank you very much. My nickname is Pocket Rocket because I'm 5 foot tall and I do everything at 400 miles an hour. But to be called a maverick is lovely, because that's a much more polite way than what I describe myself, which is a nightmare.
Tell me about your living for the crazy, because that's not a maverick statement. I don't know what is.
Oh yeah, because again, for some people, they like to go to work and they will work on a project or work on a plan, and they'll deliver something, and that's, they start at the beginning and they finish at the end, and it's fairly straightforward, but a few bumps in, and then it gets delivered, and then they go on to the next one. Well, in sort of SME, startup, scale-ups, that happens, but not often. You usually start something and then you're 2 weeks in, and then they go, actually, do you know what? And I am not going to use the word pivot because it's so overused right now. It makes me too bitch. Okay. So they just change course and they go, actually, I've decided let's do this instead. So the work that you've done up to that point a lot of people go, oh, and they feel so demoralized. Oh, well, all of that work's gone into that. Whereas I'm the opposite. I'm like, okay, bin, what are we doing now? And I'm like an excitable puppy, because each time I have to rewrite something or change something, I learn something. And it's that crave for constantly trying to challenge my brain that I live for. So that's why, there's nothing that phases me. And I am quite fearless as an individual anyway. I've come from a very adverse, start in life. So I believe in saying yes to everything, trying most things once. If I don't like it, I don't do it again. But I live for the opportunities and that present themselves, and I'm not afraid of anything. And I do speak to people, again, I'm a public speaker, and I speak to people about overcoming fear, what it is and how to overcome it. And actually, it's not what you think it is. And when you break it down to understand it, it means that you then go from being fearful to fearless, and kind of end up doing a Thelma and Louise moment every time something new comes up and you go, yeah, let's just do it. It's not right for everybody. And some people say, I couldn't do that, and I couldn't live like that. But that's how I am. That's why I'm wired. And I get the best of life and incredible opportunities as a result of that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm very much about getting people to not only be change ready, but kind of change hungry, in a sense of, one of the things I used to do with my HR teams, and then obviously an extension to that into the leadership teams, would be if something has to change, it's the excitement of the change. So, so you didn't go, oh no, we have to change something. It'd be like, whoa, yes, this is brilliant. We can get to do this, and let's try that. So that, because totally. It's, especially now, I mean, you have to be able to do change all the time, because life is change now. There's nothing else. It's all about the change.
And I say to people as well, when we talk about change, because again, it's the cycle that everyone's living in right now. We did an exercise with a colleague earlier, just not long after lockdown happened, and people were kind of very sort of panic-stricken on a lot of things. People aren't afraid of change; they're afraid of loss. They associate change with loss. So we did an exercise and said, okay, let's list everything that you've gained from lockdown and everything you've lost from lockdown. Now, with the exception of those who have lost family members through this pandemic, of course. On the whole, people have gained more than they've lost. But if you haven't stopped to think about it like that, people are still panicking about what they've lost, and actually they've gained more. And whilst, I get people it's been difficult to be locked down, and the effects of the two things, I actually, and they're quite serious things here, the effects on people's mental health.
Yeah.
And the effects on people who have suffered, physical abuse. And that's been horrific. And again, I'm involved in charity who look after people and support those suffering right now. For those type of people, it has been horrendous. And I can't, I won't skip past that at all, because not being able to get out and not being able to go out and do the things that is good for your mental health, but also being trapped in a house with an abuser and then physically not being able to go out has been horrific for some people. So there are exceptions to the rule, and I'm not generalizing there. But in terms of overall, people have gained more than they've lost. But again, that's why I've done an awful lot of support online for people with mental health issues and for people who are suffering abuse, simply because there are help out there, but everybody could do a little bit. And again, I don't claim to be an expert in these areas, although I'm trained in mental health. I just think it's the right thing to do, and get people help where you can. If you're in a position to be able to, even if you refer them to someone else, the NHS have done a stunning job, but they're also under-resourced. So, the support they've got for mental health isn't as available. It's like a 9-week waiting list, and that's at no fault of their own. So if people like myself who are trained, who can come support people that just pick up the phone or contact us on LinkedIn, I'll always find the time, because that's just the right thing to do. As a human being to another human being, that's what you should do. So like I say, the whole change piece is really interesting, but that's really fundamentally what people aren't afraid of change, or afraid of loss. And that's why I say in the work environment, where you say you worked on a project and they've done all this work, they feel they've lost their time that they did the work, rather than what are we going to gain by changing it? Actually, all of this amazing stuff over here that you and I live for. Others are like, oh, I couldn't do this. This is not comfortable for me. I don't live in the comfortable zone.
That's right. And that's why it's so important to make sure you have the narrative, and you do all the alignment, and you do all the because I think you're right. A lot of people just do change as a transactional thing, isn't it? We need to move from there to there, and these are the steps we're doing it. But they're not thinking about the emotions or the need to constantly communicate in a clear way, not in HR speak, and all this kind of stuff.
It's a psychological cycle as well. And again, it's understanding the why. When people understand why you want to change something, you're going to have far more understanding that stops them getting into that panic zone of then denial and all of the other stages. But yes, communication is critical, and I think in HR we should be huge advocacy of that, because we are trained in communication. And lots of companies. We talked last night on a program I co-delivered with. About communication, how critical it is. And I think a lot of people think they're good at it, but very few are. And I did an exercise, not last night actually, but when we're all together back in a room, and say you think you're good at communicating, get a line of people, and I will whisper something in the first person's ear, and then get them to turn around, and each person has to whisper it around the room. I guarantee you, by the time it gets to the end of the room, okay, what did Lisa say? It is absolutely far from what I said in the first place. And so I say to people, you need to learn to listen more. Really listen, because not only it's not about what you say, it's how it's received. So you think you're communicating well, but it's that, it's the receiver. How have they understood it? And if you put emotion into that, then you're going to have, they're going to listen better. They're going to, it's going to make more sense to them. And builds deep trust and all of those lovely things. But just because you said it in the way that you said it doesn't mean that your audience has understood it. And I think that's probably one of the key factors, again, in HR, that we need to do better and help others do better on that as well.
I think that's totally true. You know what? I've only ever seen the Chinese whispers work brilliantly once, and it was very early on in my career, and I worked for a kind of national retailer. And that particular store of about 400-500 people was a rumour mill of toxic nastiness. So we were sitting down with the store manager and saying, what can we do quickly just like to start off this change? And we came up with the idea of doing a Chinese whispers for key information. Mm-hmm. We had like 5 people who started off and they were the champions, and then they had to tell 5. But we made people really care about the quality of the information and made people feel special when they were one of the hubs that passed on the information. And by the end of the communication cycle, the actual message was the same as it was amazing. It was like, you never would have thought it was possible, but it's because people cared and they felt special and they felt like that they owned it, and it was really, so they would tell it to somebody and then get the person to tell them back and make sure. And
that's the key. That's the absolute key.
The importance of the message. So it wasn't. So you're right. So I think that kind of exercise is great to explain why it doesn't work, but because it was like, this is why it's really important. So they actually passed on the reasoning of the importance of the clarity of the message when they passed on the message.
Yeah, and I say, but you've absolutely got the answer there. Whereas you say to somebody, this is what message is, tell it back to me, because then you know that they've understood it. And if they do then reciprocate, then that's how it then stays together as one cohesive piece, and it ends up being the same message. But a lot of people don't do that. They go, okay, this is what we're doing as a company, this is what we want to do, this is the project, whatever it may be. And they kind of just blurb that out and they go, okay, right, hands together, clap, well done, I've done that, right, what's next? It's like, you just created a train wreck is what you've done.
They don't like the message. Do you mean? So they're like, so then it becomes kind of like, well, I've been told to tell you this by my boss, and I really don't agree with it, but they say it's important. So that's before they even got to the message. So people are already discounting, aren't they? And then they pass on, my boss really hates this. He says something about this. It just gets worse and worse.
Absolutely, yeah. And you just think, so like I say, so it was never going to be a winner the moment that came out of somebody's mouth. And I have to do this, but I'm really, I've not got the buy-in. So I'm gonna, misery loves company, doesn't it?
Or they love to give the message to marketing. So marketing, this is an internal communication, and you need to internally communicate it, but you don't need to speak to HR because it's a marketing message. It's like, no. Anything to the staff, I need to know what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, because they say, oh, marketing's really good at communicating. Oh, they can polish a story and make it sound good, but that's not the same as making sure the actual message and what the feeling of it gets delivered as well. So that's
absolutely
really funny. So
yeah.
one of the things I'm noticing a lot, and you kind of alluded to it, is that right now HR people are losing their jobs hand over fist. It's just scary in terms of, I know HR always gets hit when there's a change, but this time it's almost like a culling.
Absolutely.
Which is frightening, because you think, who's going to do the work when these people aren't there? So what can be done to help a HR person that has lost their job? What do you suggest? Because it's quite tragic that almost every day there's another 10 people you personally know.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's heartbreaking right now. Absolutely. Yeah. And I've been there very recently because I was 6 months in a 12-month contract in London, and they were a recruitment-based company. So, so they overnight they cut a lot of people and then reduced people's pay, and then some went on furlough, etc. So they did what they needed to do. I have no umbrage with that. They've done what they needed to do. But in terms of and it's slightly different because it was a contract, but the same way as I still then found myself as somebody who pays the bills and pays the mortgage without a job. So I did what everybody else does at the moment, which is you go on the job boards, you start clicking. Well, in the beginning, you were lucky if there was 12 jobs that were worth clicking on, in terms of everything just dried up overnight in the recruitment space. So you panic and you go, okay, let me just stop clicking. And then and I have to kind of give a shout out here to somebody, because I'd done that for a couple of weeks and was found I wasn't very successful. And also, when on the job boards, you were 742. And at that point, you go, wow. Yeah, that kind of wins you, because it's going to be competitive, but you don't really understand the enormity of the scale of what's just hit literally 3 weeks in. And I'm connected to a lady called Katrina Collier. I don't know if you know her. She's okay. So I love Katrina. Well. So she's also a published author and speaker. So we'd only spoken a couple of times, but I like her because she's straight down to business. She's no BS. She'll call it as it is. A bit like myself. So she's my cup of tea when it comes to personality. And actually, it was a turning moment for me, because she messaged on something and she said, well, no offense, Lisa, but this is beige. Your profile's beige. You're not beige. We've only spoken a couple of times, but I do know you're not beige, and you've got a huge network. What are you doing applying for jobs? Push your network. And although it was something that I absolutely knew to do at that point, because I was still in the fear in terms of panic mode of, oh gosh, the world's gone his backside. How am I going to pay my bills? The same as everyone else. It was a moment where the penny just dropped. I was like, of course, how stupid have I been? Because I couldn't see the wood for the trees, because I was completely blinded at that point. So I do have, I do have to say thank you to Katrina for that, because at that moment it was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. And then went off the next day. I was like, and at that point I didn't apply for a job. I stopped clicking. I didn't apply for anything. I got on the phone. I started networking. I started speaking to people. I started posting more, getting bigger engagement, maybe dialing up the sass a little bit. There was a number of agencies who rang me and said, I haven't got anything right now, but let's find out about you because of this. And then there was a turning point where I'd got some number of interviews and took some of those, and they were longer, even though they're obviously on Skype. There was like 3 and 4, versions of it and presentation. So it wasn't a quick thing to do by any means. And it felt like people were asking for more, different things in the interview where they did before. And I don't know whether that was because they felt they were missing something from the face-to-face, and where you can pick up the vibe of somebody. Can't quite do that on video. I don't know. But everything just seemed to be longer, or 6 stages or 5 stages. And some of it was just crazy. So So I went through that process, but obviously those interviews came from my network and people saying, actually, I really like what you're saying and everything else. And that's how I then connected with who I'm going to join now. She had seen the stuff online and then said, I like your passion and everything, and we got contacted. But I also then thought, okay, so this is good, but also other people will be doing this. I've got the, got the benefit of having a huge network and, huge status on LinkedIn. So I made that work for me the same way as I spent a lot of time speaking to other people who had lost their job, because I found that supporting each other that way was also good, because it's hard for a lot of people, and it's easy to have a conversation with somebody who's in the same boat. Who's not with your family, who's not your friend, who will give a different view. So take that, get that support. You're supporting them, they're supporting you. And I think at this sort of time, that's really important as well. And of course, they then have gone on to take jobs and remember who you are. So then they're more likely to remember to scoop you up with them. So there's a lot of value in that. And the same way as, even though somebody's not got something right now, keep in touch. When you apply for a job online, I say to people, well, you can go and click on the LinkedIn job, but do better than that. Go and find out the actual name of the recruiter. Go and get their email address. We've got Google. It's amazing what you can do with 10 minutes of digging. So find their email address, email them. And again, what I then did is took it to I say extremes. I just like to call it innovation. Is I got 2 previous CEOs I'd worked with and said, hi guys, how do you feel about doing a video testimonial? Video is really hot right now, and I like it because it you see it, you can feel it, and the passion's there. Rather than when somebody rings up and says, "Can I have a reference?" they will just say, "Here's the name, here's the title, here's the dates that were there." It's absolutely irrelevant and useless. It doesn't add value to anybody. It's another admin process we've always done, and it really needs another thing that just needs to be put in the bin. So I got them to video. And then my niece, who is a wonderful videographer, studying as a student at the moment, I said, okay, Auntie Lisa needs a hand. Can you sort this out for us? She's like, yeah, no worries. So thank you, Alex Dorian, for that. Bless you. So she put together this montage of them talking about what I delivered, who I am, and why people should want to engage with me. That was a hugely powerful piece and not been done by anybody. It's not, I really thought I'd come onto something special. And I get that not everybody is going to have the ability to do that. But if you can, do it. Because again, it was another thing that somebody had seen online and said, innovation is one of our key values. And you've just blown that out of the water. Let's have a conversation. I ended up with 4 jobs in the end and had to choose. And it was a privilege to be in the position to have to do that. But because I'd made a different noise, because again, by building the network, it meant that more people had visibility, more people could see. And so, Katrina was absolutely right, worked my network, and that's how I was successful in the end. But I also respect that people don't have what I have right now, but make a start. I didn't have it overnight. It didn't click a switch and I had lots of, millions of views every time I post. It takes work, it takes effort. You have to be consistent and join other people that are like-minded. So, but start your first post, start your first blog, have an opinion about something, get involved, get engaged. And I suggest that people do more of that than blindly click on, a role and be number 700. They'll get nowhere. And it's just demoralizing. And when you don't hear back and things like that, and it starts to affect then your own confidence, and you think, oh, well, maybe I'm not very good at this anymore. And it's so easy to get into that space. So that's why I say get a support buddy that's also been with there. Because whilst you'll get, a bad day and you think, I've applied for 5 jobs, I've applied for 15 jobs, I've heard nothing back, and you start to go, just maybe I'm rubbish, maybe I should just retire. You usually find that other person says, oh, you've had a bad day, Lisa, it's absolutely fine, da, 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 da. And Zoe Dyson, again, I have to name drop her because she has been my little gem. We had a conversation. She's as batty as I am. We got like a house on fire. So we kind of helped each other on the days where I think, do you know what, Zoe, I don't know if I can do this. I can't get going. I'm exhausted. She's got, yeah, you can. We can do this, blah, blah, blah. And then I would do the same for her. So she's been a little ray of sunshine. So it's important that you find people that are there for you as well. And then we've made great connections. We're gonna hang out when all of this crazy is done, and meet face to face. So so I also have met some incredible people online, which I know will become firm friends for life. That is I absolutely know to be.
Oh, sorry, that's fantastic. I totally agree. I mean, business people do, as I say, video testimonials, but I've never seen somebody in a corporate space get video testimonials. That is really innovative and makes so much sense. And I also agree with the whole get the profile sorted, because, if you're going to interview somebody when you're in your role, you check them out and you go to LinkedIn straight away. It's just standard, isn't it? So, if you're looking for a job, then you must know that your LinkedIn stuff needs to be right, because you need to stand out now.
Yeah, and like I say, when you are one of thousands of people, what I've said to people is, okay, so let's just say you're in a pool right now and there's 5,000 HR managers. What's special about you? And when I say that, they kind of gasp and go, wow, Lisa, that's harsh. No, I'm being hard for the right reasons. What's special about you? And you have to work on it with people. They genuinely, it's like, well, and then it's like, okay, so, all right, that's amazing. Okay, this is incredible. I didn't know that. That's super interesting. Where's that? Where is that on any of your profile, any of your CV, anything? Well, kind of no. Yeah, exactly. So let's go get some of that, and then let's dial that bit up, because that's where your superstar status is. Let's go put some work into that corner there, because that's the difference between you and everyone else.
That's right. I totally agree. I talk about that, in the sense that you need a proposition story. I think it's quite interesting in the sense that, as a HR professional, like one of the questions I used to always ask at the end of an interview, especially with people I liked, was, why you? And the amount of times that person has lost the job I wanted to give them, because they went, I don't know, I'm nothing special. And they're like, and then you prod going, yeah, but you said this, and you said this, and they're like, yeah, but I'm supposed to say to everybody else. And you're like, ugh.
But I said, when we first started talking, people say about you, because we live in the space where we ask everybody about themselves. We're not good at telling. See, again, that's where, HR people are not good at doing their own PR.
No, it's true.
They have to learn how to market themselves better as individuals and as professionals and as experts in their own right. Because let's face it, we look after people, recruitment, we're expected to be employment lawyers, wellness advocates. We wear about 10 hats a day. And yet we're not classed as experts. Well, no offense. I always say to people, if you think you can do your job without HR, go try it. And yes, I did. You'll call me before I'll need to call you. It's guaranteed, because, we are experts, and people, the businesses do benefit from having the right people, and they should be involved in the business and how it runs, etc. And a lot of it isn't. So there's so many people missing out on such. And again, it comes back to good commercial sense. But there's so many missing out just because they can't see it. They're blindsided by it.
Yeah, I must admit, I do find it particularly satisfying mentoring HR people, because as you said, there's a huge impact that can be made, and it's uncovering it. And I think if you help people, especially at this stage when they're in an organisation, then they'll be so much better at what they're doing, because they've done all that sort of pre-work beforehand. Do you think that it's important that someone has a side hustle? Because one of the things I've noticed, like in the groups I've been in, and I just see a flood of HR people losing their jobs and panicking. And I say, is there anything that you can do in the meantime? Whilst here's some things that you could be doing now, but in the meantime, could you do some coaching? Could you, what do you have that you could do? And they seem to be quite reluctant to look to flex into a different area.
Again, I would say it's because, see, I live in both spaces. I live in, where I have a permanent role, and then I have a couple of things on the side, which are fun things to do that happen in the evenings that don't impact anything or anyone else. So it works. So I live in both worlds. I live, but in terms of getting somebody to go from a stable, safe environment that they feel at the moment, even though they've lost a job, if you just, take that security piece, which is a huge piece for people, into something where you're saying, well, you could go and do something else, but there's no guarantee. You haven't got that 3,000 plus salary a month guaranteed in your bank account. You have to go and be the person who delivers the coaching, for example. Plus you have to be sales, you have to be marketing, you have to be operations, you have to be advertising. And those skills are very different to HR skills. So again, it comes back to, if you don't know business and how it runs, then you'll struggle to run a business. And I also do, again, I've got a number of HR consultancy mentor teams, because they are great at doing the coaching. They're great at teaching people. They're passionate about, understanding why people need their skills in that aspect. What they're not good at is actually getting new clients, because they suffer with not being able to actually get the sale and get into market themselves. Because like I say, if you and I go onto LinkedIn now and we typed in coach, there's billions of them. There's hundreds of thousands of people. And again, it comes back to, okay, well, let's look about what's special about you, what's niche about you, what's your message, and when I said to them, okay, tell me as a client how you would talk to me. So you pretend you don't know me, put it out there and tell me who you are. And like you say, and what comes back, it's like, no, would I buy from you? No, you just come across as the most irrelevant, lame, wet salmon I've ever met. And there's no way. And they kind of go, oh, and I said, okay, so let's change that dialogue, right? Try this on. And then they go, oh, yeah. Oh, and do you see what that does? That gives you this, it shows you that. And we do a little kind of, I take them through almost like a sales funnel, to be fair. And then they get it and go, okay, so we'll try that. And every single one of them have done it and said, if I don't only know that in the beginning, I'd be, have way more clients, simply because you're still running a business and you're coaching. And when you're just doing a one-to-one where it's just you, you're not only growing your own business, you're in your business and you are the business. So you have to learn the business skills for you to be successful. You can't just wake up next day and say, oh, I want to be a coach. And then just start. The coaching is just about talking to people. No, you have to feed the pipeline. You have to have people come into your business to be able to coach. And so that security blanket of having a set salary versus not, and then having to learn new skills to be able to move into a different space, people really struggle with.
Yeah, I think that this is the way it's going to be now, isn't it? I think, for children now and well, anybody now really, it's a case of, if you are going to work in the office, make sure you're still doing something on the side, because there's no security in the office.
Agreed. You and I are from, a background where, you had stability. You had long-term service awards and those sorts of things, and that's gone. There is, whether people like it or not, the forever job, it's done, it's over. And even if you have a permanent role, it could end tomorrow. So there is no security that there used to be. That long service thing is changed because, the environment's changed. But not only that, if you think about right now, we've got 4 different generations of people within the workplace. And, the younger generation now, they are more transient. They're more transient, so they don't buy mortgages because they don't want to put down roots, because they'll go wherever the next career opportunity is, and good for them. It's a whole wide world out there. Go for it. So, they won't be tied to mortgages. They'll want to do rent for 6 months. They won't be tied down to an organisation because they've been good for them. It's about, they understand that they want the fluid nature of what they do, because they will stone hop to get where they want to get, because they can get there faster and quicker, and technology lends itself all to that very, very well. So it makes it even harder for people when you're trying to retain your best talent, knowing full well there's always going to be someone out there offering bigger and better and sexier. So you've got to work harder to keep your best. And there's obviously you and I could talk for days on that one, but you know what I mean? But in terms of the world has changed, and the forever job doesn't exist anymore. It's gone, and people need to accept that. And like you say, think about what if. Because, again, there's a lot more, startup businesses. Therefore, they don't have the need for a full-time permanent HR member of staff in a team. But what that means is they will want some consultancy. They will want somebody 2 or 3 days a week. They will want somebody a couple of hours a day. And that all lends itself. Sorry, can you hear my dog? Sorry, that all lends itself to more consultancy and more people who are going out and doing their own thing, and like the not working for the same company all the time and having a different experience with the different companies that they support. So there's so much opportunities out there, and I think that will grow more and more. I definitely think that market in terms of HR support, external support, is growing. Yeah. And it goes in cycles. We've seen it where it was lots of consultancy in the old days, then it went back into in-house, and now it's coming back out to, as and when they need it. And there are benefits and obviously of doing that in terms of costs. Sometimes I question that you lose the cohesiveness and, the longer term view of the business, etc. So, but there's a place for both is what I'm saying, depending on the company.
Yes, and there's so much to be gained and so much to be lost. You have to work harder to get engagement and, the care for the company with externals and all that sort of stuff. But it's we're living in interesting times for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Who could have predicted this, right?
Exactly. And what I'm finding now is a lot of people are being considered too old for work at age 40.
Well, I'm 49. I'm about to be 50 in December. So so if somebody comes with a big stack of cash and says, "Put your feet up, Lisa, you go retire," I'm okay with that. They can throw that one in. But,
well, you've got your coaching business too, though.
See, I'd be bored. I will be one of these people that you'll say, you have to work to some point and then put your feet up. I wouldn't know how to put my feet up. No. I would be bored in 3 weeks. I'd be climbing the walls and have to go and do something. So
it does demonstrate that. It does demonstrate if you're in a company and you are getting to regardless of age discrimination and everything else, but you're getting to 35, you need to be particularly shown as relevant. Do you know what I mean? Because
but isn't that awful though?
It is awful. I mean,
isn't that awful that, like you say, no. Do you know it is awful that people sort of say. And there's one guy I was speaking to, actually, a sales director the other day, and he's 52, and he said, "I'm really struggling, and it's because there is, his words were, they've got young whippersnappers out there." He said, "and they're running rings around my list." And I said, "Yes, but they have youth on their side. You have experience, you have knowledge, you have a consistent history of delivery. They don't. Their talk is cheap. You can walk the walk. Now flip that and go back out there and get fighting." Anyway, 3 days later, he said, "Right, I've done it, and you're right, and I've had a conversation, and I owned the conversation, and you reminded me who I am, and I've nailed it, and I've got a job." And I was like, "I am so proud of you, man. Honestly, I was so chuffed for him." Because again, it's just that, it is hard. It does exist, though. It does exist, and I do get it in all aspects of any sort of form of discrimination, and it just disgusts me because, people shouldn't have a view one way or the other because of age or anything at all. People are talented, and I know 63-year-olds who are still working who have more energy than some of the teenagers I know. So energy, focus, experience. I just think that if people think that, then they are missing out on so much talent. And you know what? That's sad on them. They'll never know what they missed. And it's such a shame.
I see it as a deficit of leadership because quite often people, especially millennials, in that age group, especially late millennials, becoming leaders, but concerned about the age. So they're not being necessarily trained on how to lead. They have, they're in flat organisations, they're leading people, then they see someone who's older who may remind them of their parents, and they don't, and then they don't understand how. I mean, because for me, in my first summer job, my first Saturday job, I ended up being a supervisor in a retail organisation, and I used to manage 60-year-old people, and I was 15. And it teaches you to understand, what people have to offer and all this kind of stuff. And I think when I go to organisations to do Maverick leadership programs with them, I'm finding that you've got like a group of millennials, which when you think is about 39 down to 25-ish. So it's quite a span of individuals. But even so, they never generally have gone for leadership training. They've never necessarily seen good leaders to aspire to.
Yeah.
and they're in organisations that suddenly become flat. So the organisation itself doesn't know how to deal with this kind of flat matrix way of doing things. So that when they see people who are older than them, they're automatically going, I can't manage that person because they'll tell me what to do.
Yeah. But again, it comes back to insecurity.
Exactly. So then they don't hire them either because they're like, oh, you've got 30 years experience on me. You'll just tell me what to do, and I can't be important, which is really tragic. But that's a lack of leadership and leadership understanding.
Oh, absolutely. And like I say, but it's the gig economy right now. You've got a number of younger people who have not only started their own business, but have now started taking people on because their business is so successful. And one of the guys I know is 23. And when we talked about that, his biggest hang-up was his age. And the reason why he thought he was struggling to get clients was because of the opposite way around. Is, well, I'm young, they won't take me seriously.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, again, it comes back to, you are 23. You have got a £2 million business. You are 23.
I know, it's unbelievable.
You've got 5 people under your belt. You are 23. I said, at 23 years old, I said, I just started dating my husband. I said, I was still going out and getting leather 4 days a week. There was no way I could have done anything like
I know,
you
it's
did
crazy.
at 23 years old. So stop thinking it's a bad thing and see it as your USP. I'm 23 and I'm totally rocking it. And oh my God, amazing. Do you know what I mean?
It's amazing. It's just so exciting too.
But again, he takes where I say, but then he also understands what he's good at and what he isn't good at. So he then says, okay, so when it comes to managing people, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I should do. I don't know what good looks like. So he's mature enough to say, so those are the things that I need to be developed in to get even better. But again, that takes a mature mind, even in a younger body sort of thing. But yeah, I'm just so proud of him because of that fact. But it's comes back to insecurity of, I've done this, I've been successful, but I don't really feel that I deserve it quite yet because it still doesn't feel real.
Yes, that's true. I think this is a great place to stop, but before I do so, is there anything I should have asked you and you're sitting there going, that stupid woman never asked me this question, because this is your chance to tell me now.
No, do you know what? I've almost forgot we're recording. I've just had a lovely time.
That is a really good testament. I love that.
Yeah, it's just like, I'm just having a cup of tea. I've got my Earl Grey in front of me. I'm enjoying myself, having a little chat with Judith. No, I've had a lovely time.
Brilliant. So will you come back again when you're not busy?
Yes, I'd love to. Yeah, let's do some more things. And I'm doing a video. How would I put it? I don't quite know what to call it yet, if I'm honest, Judith. So I'm doing a video piece where I'm being filmed behind the scenes, which sounds really boring because there's not an awful lot happening right now in terms of we're all stuck in house. But obviously, because I'm involved in lots of different things, somebody said to me, you do so much that people have no idea about, so you should show people who you are more. And so if you think I'm out there at the moment, Judith, hold on to your hat, my darling, because it's about to get a whole load worse. And so we're doing a couple of video montages on stuff behind the scenes. And then I've also just agreed to last night speak to a HR director who is absolutely brilliant in terms of his personality. And we're kind of going to do a Peter Kay car share conversation.
Oh my gosh.
So we'll put probably a minute of that on LinkedIn. It will have to be heavily edited and the rest will go on YouTube, but it will be for 18s over, probably 25s over, to be fair. So if somebody wants to know how crazy it gets, so you should come and do that. Once, obviously, we can do that. But so there's lots of other things, again, too. And it's all around, making a different noise, having some fun, loving what you do. HR people haven't got to be boring. We can have a personality, we can have a giggle. You and I would have not fared our careers to this point, Judith, without having a great sense of humour, would we? Some of the stuff we have to do is really heartbreaking. 2 years ago, I had to make 140 people redundant. Now, you carry the burden, you carry the emotional burden of that. I don't care what anybody says. You can't
people don't
ignore
think
that.
you do that. I think that's such a good point, because I remember the first. Well, I remember all the redundancies that you do, but I remember the very first one, and me and the manager, it was a friend as well, like a work friend of us, and then we did the thing and then shut the door, and we both just broke into tears and we just cried because it was just so hot, it just, and then we kind of wiped the tears and then the next one, and I think people think because you're outwardly professional, because if you suddenly start crying, they'll start crying. It's not helping anybody. Yeah. So you're outwardly professional. People think it doesn't bother you. Don't think that you go home and you think about it and you worry about it and you worry about the individual and I think they just think that, especially in HR, that you're like a robot that goes, right, I need to make people redundant, I'll just do this, press, and here's a consultant. You don't care. And of course you care deeply, but you can't get emotional because it's not helpful to anybody for you to be emotional.
Yeah, and like you say, so whilst, yes, we have to execute the difficult decisions of the business, it doesn't make it easy. And like you say, and that's where humour comes in. It's not a laughing matter, but where we get the odd giggle in the job that somebody does something funny. And for example, there was a guy that we had to have a word with and sort of say to him, he used to come to work pretty scruffy, pretty smelly. And so, again, nobody likes to have a conversation of... No. Can you...
I've had that conversation.
But everybody comes to HR, don't they? They go,
it's like, seriously, aren't you the manager? You have the conversation. I'm not doing these anymore.
But we do. We get landed with all of those. So you go, another one. Okay, I'll have a word. And so, so I had a word, as you do, as politely as you can, but the same way as you need to say to somebody that you need to freshen up and you need to tidy up a little bit. And all of that lovely thing. So he came to work the next day wearing a suit. Or so somebody came into my office and said, so-and-so has come in today and he's wearing a suit. So I said, oh, okay. I didn't expect him to wear a suit, but I'm glad that he's taken some feedback on. He said, it's no ordinary suit, Lisa. So I was like, oh. And I could tell by the look on that person's face that this was not going to end well. I was like, oh, what's that then? So he said, I think you need to come and see it rather than describe it. And at that point I thought, oh, what? So of course I was like, here we go, rolling of the eyes, goes down the corridor, goes into the office, and there he is. He is in a suit, Judith. He's in a suit. His suit is made of bubble wrap.
Oh my.
He had designed a suit and bubble wrap, and he had nothing else on but the bubble wrap.
It's innovative for sure. That must have been a great conversation.
And so, as a job, as a professional, this is the person that's like, and I couldn't hold it in. I couldn't hold it in. And I just stood there and I looked him up and down. And, what I should have done is been horrified, left the room and had a word. I couldn't move because at that point I couldn't hold it in. And I just burst out laughing, which was awful of me, but I couldn't help it.
You're human after all.
Yeah. And so I just burst out laughing. Then he said, too much. And so I just looked at him and said, well, it's bubble wrap. I said, you don't know why I'm laughing, do you? And he said, well, because it's funny, isn't it, Lisa? And I went, well, no, actually it's not. It's actually offensive because we talked about it yesterday and I feel that you've taken it you've belittled what we've said and you haven't really taken it on board. I said, that's the serious side. I said, but right now, because you're covered in bubble wrap, I said, like anybody else, I just want to hold you and pop them. I just had this thing where I could see myself running behind him and just hugging him to pop them. And I was like, yeah, so I need to leave the room before, but I'd be unprofessional and you need to go home and change and be back in an hour and I want that hour back. Otherwise, don't come back at all. And he's like, yeah, okay, fair enough. But, you got to, there are some times where you just can't help it and you have to laugh because it's so like, yeah. But so you take the rough with the smooth, for sure. Enjoy the giggles while you can, but I think your good humour gets you through the very difficult times. And so, like say, you don't go home and you don't end up taking all the stress and worry home, which obviously then affects your mental health, affects your family because of how you are around them, and they have to deal with all of that. So, like you say, it's important to remember that there are a lot of people losing jobs, but the people that are saying to people that making people redundant, it's not easy for them to do that either. So whilst it's not ideal and it's hurtful and people are afraid, remember there's another person on the other end of that conversation. They don't want to be the person to tell you that, and they are carrying that burden too. So yeah, it's a good point.
Brilliant, thank you for that, and hopefully you'll come back soon.
What we'll do in the next one then, Judith, is you and I can share funny stories about HR stuff.
Oh dear, I'll have to do some severe editing.
Brilliant.
Every HR person has a story there's a book that you can never write. I don't think anybody would ever believe you. It's like you're like, there's this thing happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and it's just like, I didn't know. It's just, I'm not sure it can be aired though. That's the problem.
This is true. Yeah, maybe that's an offline one. Okay.
I'm thinking no, I don't think we could share that. But yeah, that's great. Thank you once again for tuning into the Maverick Paradox podcast. I hope you have enjoyed listening to my conversation with Lisa as much as I enjoyed having it. If you are pathologically curious and would love to find out more about the Maverick Paradox, then please subscribe to this podcast on one of the popular podcast platforms. Alternatively, you could explore our resources on Mavericks at maverickparadox.com or read the Maverick Paradox magazine. We publish frequently each week. If you subscribe, you will get our monthly newsletter. And let's not forget my book, The Maverick Paradox, The Secret Power Behind Successful Leaders. For those that love a good discussion, you could apply to join our exclusive Facebook group. And finally, if you would like to work with us or just interested in finding out more about the Maverick at work, check out our website maverickparadox.co.uk.